up to the panel. Those of you who are in the painting business, you might have heard of this guy, not sure. But Nick Slavik is a very, very good friend of mine, somebody that I admire in terms of the way he operates, just life, actually, more so than anything. He's an amazing guy. He comes with culture, systems, strategy. And believe it or not, at first, I saw Nick as this unreachable superhero in my journey that I wouldn't be able to communicate with. I felt as though I just and I think one time he liked one of my photos on Instagram, and then he followed me, and it was a good day. And then you get to talking with Nick, and he's the most down to earth, sensible, humble, just one of my favorite people. So I know he doesn't need to hear all that, but it's just important that you guys know that Nick is here giving his time. He is in the middle of a major hiring sprint in his company. I'm sure as soon as he's done this meeting, he's going to dart right back out the door, and that is 100% fact. So for him to share some time with you guys, sit up straight. You guys have been with me since 9 o'clock this morning. Nick, they've been eating lunch as they go. You guys are going to learn some good stuff here. I know that for a fact. So I'm going to let you take it away. I'm going to shut up now. Go ahead, Nick. This is all yours, buddy.
I love it, man. Okay, so Tanner Mullen, I assume I can do some screen share. I'm going to reconfigure my screens here so that I can do that. And let me see here. I have to get all my stuff in order because I want to actually show you guys stuff. I can get long-winded. I'm a loudmouth. And let's see what we can do here. All right, screen share. We can do this. We're all winners. Okay. Let me make sure. Mr. Tanner Mullen, is there a way for me to show my tiny little face in the corner, or is that not possible?
Well, I think they can see you because you're on the panel, so you should be good to go.
Okay, perfect, because I'm seeing two separate things. So, all right, so I assume everybody can see a big cartoon Nick Slavik face right here. If not, Tanner, I assume you'll let me know. But otherwise, thank you guys for this opportunity. And Tanner, I don't take compliments well, but I do appreciate them. You make me blush, and I appreciate that very much. So, okay, Tanner has tapped me to talk about something I recently deep dove into my show, Ask a Painter Live. That's where most of you guys trip over me. Like I said, I am a loudmouth on the internet. I say a lot of things to a lot of people, and sometimes people like Tanner interact back, and I make friends for a lifetime. So, this is sort of that in Tanner's group, painting contractors, the most popular question is, what do you charge for X? And that is on its face, the most simple and most complex question you could possibly answer. But I do not like most of the responses. So instead of me just complaining about there not being enough responses on there and unproductive talks, I actually came up with a treatise of how to come up with a price, and not just here's what you charge for X, charge this price. It's more of like teach a man to fish. Teach a painter or an estimator to fish. So that's kind of what I'm going to be talking about today. And Tanner, I'll thank you again for Dripjobs. I will thank you again for your Facebook group. And I will thank you again for being a great leader in our industry and for putting this on today, especially free.
Yeah. My pleasure.
This is insane. I can't believe this is free.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. All right, people enjoy it. I have a feeling Tanner will not make this free in the future.
It's value first, always.
Okay. All right, let's go back to, I need to get into this guy here. Benchmarks. Okay, let's talk about some industry benchmarks. In order to lay down the law, let's see, am I still sharing, Tanner, benchmarks?
Yep, you're good, man. We see
awesome. Everything. Okay. All right, industry benchmarks. These are not perfect. They're not always right for every company, but they're pretty dang accurate. If you have more than 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 painters, give or take, these are some common benchmarks you can use to see if your company is going well. It all starts with things that we know, and then we solve for X. Like, remember, we have all gone through some sort of school. Some of us dropped out, some of us went a little farther, but either way, some of us had to come across some algebra where we do that proverbial problem. What is X? Solve for X, right? So there's many things that we know. We plug in the knowns, and then we use those to solve for X. And estimating is that exact same problem, which is when we think about benchmarks for a company, most people work 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year. That's 2,000 hours. Our goal, on the lowest goal, a professional painting company should generate, not sell, not charge, generate, is $65 an hour. That is alarmingly low, and that will put you in some critical cash flow situations, but it's a low benchmark that we need to address. That means if a painter works for 2,000 hours a year, making $65 an hour for your company, they will generate $130,000 of revenue. If you have 8 of those together, congratulations, you are in the top 1% of the painting industry, and you have a $1 million paint company, the proverbial $1 million paint company. Now, how do we make sure that we can get $1 million coming through our checkbook in a year? How do we make sure we actually keep some of it? Benchmarks. Materials. We want to keep materials to about 15% of every project, obviously lower if we can. Labor, we want to keep it to 40% lower if we can, leaving you with a gross profit of 45%. Now, again, these are not perfect. They're not great for everybody, but for the majority of painting companies, this is the best place ever to start with this stuff. Leaves you a gross profit of 45. If you can keep 30% of your revenue spending on overhead, that leaves you with a net profit of 15%. 15% true net profit after an owner is paid for whatever jobs they have in the company, their job descriptions, is sort of the benchmark in the industry of, if you're doing less than that, you should try to improve. If you're doing more than that, continue to improve, but be proud of what you've done. So that's basically what we're dealing with. So when we talk about these numbers that I'm going to talk about here on the next couple spreadsheets, I just want you to know that there's a big global bit of numbers and benchmarks, and then estimating is only one portion of this, right? Because within these benchmarks, there's production, there's overhead, there's marketing, there's different job descriptions, coordination, painters, this and that. Estimating is only one thing that goes into this. Estimating will not fix it. It usually won't hurt it, but it's got to be one functioning part of it. So production rates. Tanner asked me to talk on some basic production rates. There's lots of ways of estimating. There's 3 main ways that I kind of think about finding a price, and I don't stick to just one. Number one, there's gut, right? Most of our industry is this. You lick your finger, you put it in the air, smells like a 5,500 to me. Let's charge that and move on. And then we never really know if we made money on it or not until we job cost later. Now there is metric-based bidding or production rate bidding, which is what you guys are looking at right now, is a simple way to figure out what your charge rate was for a bedroom. So again, we have knowns, right? We know what we charge for bedrooms. We know how much paint we use, and we know how much time it takes. Now, you may not write it down, but that number does exist, and you have to be intentional and write that down. I'm not going to go through every line item on here. This is simple math. It's an unsatisfying answer to that question, what do you charge for X? Which is, you have to track a few things consistently, forever, all the time. We charge $500. Materials were 84. We used 2 gallons of paint. We used 4 hours. That's the standard in my company. After 3 months of employment, you need to paint the walls in a bedroom in 4 hours. If you can do all of that, your gross profit will be 50% compared to the 45% mark. Now, that's fine. That's basic job costing. But how do we figure out what to charge for the next bedroom? That is simple. The measurements of that bedroom do exist. They do exist. You just have to measure them and track them. So there's wall square footage. If it's a 15 by 15 by 8 foot room, you're going to have 480 square feet of wall. If you get production rate, 480 square feet per gallon, that's 480 square feet of wall, 2 coats. You're going to use 1 gallon per each coat, give or take. Your production rate, if you put a painter in there, is 240 square feet per hour. You know how much they did. Now, if you divide your price, the revenue you made from that job by the square footage, you're going to come up with $1.04 a square foot. Now, what that number is not is what everybody in the country should charge for walls. What that number is, it tells you what you charge for that job. It doesn't tell you if it's a good rate or a bad rate. It just tells you what is. Now, if you were profitable, the gross profit benchmark is 45%. On this particular job, if all these things are true, you made 50.2% gross profit. You outperformed almost 10% better on that job. So that means in the future, if you're bidding bedrooms and you have that painter on there and you use that paint and all these conditions are the same, $1.04 square foot is a profitable charge rate for you. But that's not the end all and be all. The perfect price, another unsatisfying answer. The perfect price is 3 things. It has to be the highest possible number you can charge for a job. It has to fill your calendar. And when you produce it, it has to produce profitably. Now, again, that's unsatisfying because it doesn't actually say charge $1 a square foot. Every company is going to be different. We have between 25 people in the winter and 40 people in the summer. We have a big hungry steam engine. We have to shovel a lot of coal into it. It's likely that my prices are actually lower than a lot of other paint companies because we need a high volume of work and things like that. So you can always say, here's what Nick's charges, but you need to put an asterisk around it. Now, same thing goes for exteriors too. We are in the thick of the exterior season here in Minnesota and the rest of the country. And you can do the same thing. I used an app called Hover to do this years ago. We tracked 2 years worth of projects, every estimate, every job we did. I measured to the square inch every single house with this. I think you take 8 pictures of it. It charges you $50 to $100, and it gives you a 3D model of the house within a day. We use that to gather production rates. So now when every time we estimated a house, we figured out what was the ending price per square foot, what was the charge rate, and then when we produced it, in turn, we did the job costing and find out, is that a good rate or a bad rate? And every time we got a bad rate, we had a decision to make. Do we need to change the way we paint the house or change the humans on the job, or do we need to charge more? Because it's not always just price, right? So there's an example of an exterior too. It is no different than measuring a bedroom, which is we have what we charge for the house, we have the materials for the house, we have the painting labor for the house, and then we have our gross profit. And this one, I picked this one because simple house, but also it just ticked over on gross profit. So we measured the siding and the trim. We measured the coverage of the paint. There's our production rate on this particular house with these particular people, with these colors, with this substrate, with that labor. We produce 23 finished square feet of house, 2 coats per hour, meaning we charge $7.27 a square foot for that particular house. So that's the basic of production rates. You don't have to memorize the exact equations and all that other stuff, but it's more of the idea of think about it holistically. As business owners, we're problem solvers. There's things we know. There is revenue. There's the check that the client wrote to us. There is the paint we used. We had to pay Sherwin or Benjamin Moore or another paint company. That is a known quantity that we have to come to face with. There's payroll. That is a known quantity. And the measurements of that house do exist. Now, all the information is right there. But information alone doesn't make a successful business. It's information and grit. So now, challenge to you and the rest of the industry, do you guys have enough grit to get out there and do simple math on your houses that will eventually lead you to know what is the perfect price? Right now, I am 100% comfortable in my company. We have 2 production managers. We have 2 estimators. We have myself, an office coordinator. When we put that functioning team together and we look at these simple math problems we do, I can look a client or the industry or another paint company in the face and say, honestly, right now, we have almost the perfect price for jobs for my company, for what we need. It fills our calendar. They're very profitable when we do it. And when we produce them, it fills our calendar. I believe it's the highest profitable price that we can do. We do experiments where we slowly increase that price until we sell less of them. And then we have a gap in the schedule. And then we know for my company size, for my market, for this type of the season, we have actually met the market rate. And the market rate is something that is very, very difficult to ascertain. Think about, I'm going to shut up very soon because there's nothing more I like better than questions and answers. And I want to get to those. But think about Zillow, right? You take your mouse, you hover over a house, and it gives you about an approximate of a market price. It's not perfect, but it's close. Imagine this thing right here that you're looking at and me traveling around the country giving master's classes about estimating. We actually do market rate experiments. It's no different than hovering over a deck and it basically saying, here's the average price that all the painters in your area charge for that. So gathering this data, putting it together will give you the patterns you need to see as a business owner to then make the decision to move your price up or down or change your processes. So it's a super easy way to do it. And then of course, the end all and be all, you guys know I've been screaming this for years. If you ever want to solve like 8 of the most common problems in your business, how do we recruit? When do we recruit? How do you schedule? What do you charge for X? All those things, honestly, can be solved by job costing. And it's nothing more than tracking how much paint you use, how much labor you use for every job. So you guys know I'm not going to go through all the nitty gritty of that. Everybody that I look up to in the industry who does this way better and bigger than me, they do this consistently all the time without fault. It's not some crazy moonshot, right? It's not some piece of secret software or an app that some painting company has that another doesn't have. We all have access to the same information. And the difference is who has the grit to do the nuts and bolts that make a professional business every single day. Let me make sure I didn't forget any slides. All right. I wanted to save plenty of time for Q&A, Tanner, if that's all right with you.
Nick, can you read the questions in the chat so you can read them off and cherry pick which ones you want to answer?
You got it. You assume I can read, Tanner Mullen. All right.
Well, I'm just making sure that you can see the chat. That's all.
Oh my God, so many familiar names. I love this. Travis Moses, good to see you. Justin Cowles, the decent human being channel.
All right, guys, bring your questions for Nick. Estimating, selling, converting pictures to graphs. Any questions you guys have for Nick, drop them in the chat right now. And Nick set aside some good time for Q&A. So I think I already see a question coming in. I'll let you take it away, Nick.
Yeah, you got it. So a couple of them right here. Tanner, thanks for filling in that Hover. I am not paid by Hover. I am agnostic to it. There's many things like my punch in and punch out app. I started using it 7 or 8 years ago. I never looked into another one and I just use it and it doesn't fault. The same thing with Hover for me, which is I used it a bunch of years ago. It was helpful. I've never looked into another one. It helped me. There's probably 8 of them out there that'll help you as well too. Do you have any more details on the job costing masterclasses? So I travel the country 10 to 15 times a year, usually brought on by different sponsors and things like that. Actually, Tanner, you and I were in Florida to kick off the Gathering of Florida Painters, GOFP down there. And yeah, the same thing. We go down there and on the bequest of people, on the bequest of vendors, I go around and do these deep dives. I was just in Indianapolis and we did one of my favorite things to do ever, which is a full day. We did an entire morning of deep diving into, imagine a 3.5 hour version of what I just talked about, where there's 187 slides where I show you real-time data from my company. That's what we do. And at the end of that, we actually have a QR code. Everybody in the audience, I think there was 100 people there. Everybody in the audience follows the QR code. They estimate anonymously that same bedroom that I was showing you there. I give all the specifics of it, and anonymously it aggregates all the data. And in that room, in real time, it'll populate the data, show the high, low, and the average of the market rate of that room. And that is my unique contribution to all these places that I go around. And I've done this for all the major metro areas. And Tanner, you would love to know this. Everybody says, when the question is asked, what do you charge for X? People say, well, we can't even possibly start talking about that. I live in Minnesota and Tanner lives in Florida. Well, when you aggregate a bunch of anonymous data like that, I've done this, the 5 major metros, we're talking upper Northeast, Florida, Seattle, the Bay Area, and Indianapolis and Minneapolis. Couldn't be farther geographically spaced. Everybody's within about $10 of estimating the same bedroom. And that's it. It's
awesome.
Just, we think we have secrets, Tanner. There is no secrets.
No secrets, just systems.
Can't say it any better than that, man. I love that. So, all right. Job costing with new hires. I'm assuming, Travis, you're asking about the very low amounts of gross profit you get with new hires. And so one thing we do in my company too, we job cost all the jobs. When we have so many data points of new apprentices coming on that we can tell you that it'll be between a 15 and 30% drop in points on a job if you put an experienced person and a non-experienced person on the job together. Now, over the course of 6 months, hopefully 3 to 6 months, but really 6 months, we've never seen it go past 6 months. That 30% extra labor that it takes closes and you're right at gross profit again. But that is dependent. That doesn't happen by itself. It depends on goal setting and review systems, training, standard operating procedures, and again, all that unsexy stuff. So Zach, I estimate large custom projects and it makes the breakdown a lot more complicated. How do you simplify that? I oversimplify everything, which is when we do Hover for an 8,600 square foot house, not floor, siding like that, you can start taking into account opening, soffit, fascia, different substrates, this and that. I add in the windows, I add in the doors. I just want the envelope. And then as long as you're consistent with how you measure a house, with the app I used before, it just spat out one number at the end. I use that same number all the time. And then my data was consistent. So again, you can make it as complicated as you want, but that oversimplified system really helped me because it matches my personality. So you guys can email me, nick@nickslavik.com, and I'd be happy to help out with any of this stuff if you want any specific things after this. So Do you still use hover, or was it only experiment? Let's see. I did it for about 2 years. I gathered all the data I need, and now I don't have it pulled up here, but what I did was I found out that we only paint about 8 or 9 different types of houses, exteriors. Now, you can get pushback from painters saying, what about the landscaping? What about the prep? What about this and that? And it's just listen. You're letting the exceptions be the rules, and you're letting perfect stand in the way of really, really good. Really, when I broke it down, all those hover measurements led me to believe that we had like somewhere between 7 and 10 basic chunks of houses, or groups of houses that we did, from small, medium, large, extra large, double XL, triple XL. And when I started doing job costing on those, I looked at the numbers, and they kind of grouped up in pricing too. And some were more profitable than others. But when I started teaching my estimators, which is the next thing that Tanner wanted me to talk about, instead of having this infinitely complex process where we have to measure every square inch, I just said, hey, I lovingly call this the children's book. It is a picture book of houses, and there's 8 to 11 different types of houses, depending whether you add in historic restoration or not. And basically it's like, hey, new estimator at Nick Slavik Painting and Restoration, walk up to this house and point to the house that looks like this the most, right? That will get you 90% close to the price. And then you start factoring in, is there an adverse amount of prep or landscape or anything else? So again, simple, people, right? We don't have an unlimited amount of time and treasure. You can make an infinitely complex process that nobody complies with, or a pretty good process that'll get you 90% there that every single human can comply with. That'll make happier people. That'll make more accurate pricing in the long run. So. All right. Juan Jimenez, thanking me for the handbook I sent the other day. Absolutely. Travis Moses, how do you account for an apprentice and job costing? We just answered that one. John Pritt, when you hire a salesperson, what is the expectation on sales volume per year? So asterisk, we do this we calculate what is a sale a little differently. So I expect at a minimum, if an estimator in my company, we're in residential repaint, average job size 6,750, 7,000. At a minimum, to not be on a performance plan, I would expect $1 million a year. Their second year, I would like $1.5 million. Their third year, I would like 2 to 2.5, give or take. And estimator Andy, I actually have, I wonder if I have my, see if I can bring up some real numbers. I want to actually contribute something pretty cool to you guys today. So here is my actual sales tracker from my, oh, no, that is not my actual sales tracker for my company. Where did my tab go? I think Zoom is covering it. Give me 1 second. I'll show you what I actually use. So this is my sales tracker up to the date, up to the week. And you can see Andy and Ian, my 2 estimators. Andy has sold 1.4 million as of last week this year, and Ian has sold 1.19. Together as a company, we have sold $2.6 million worth of work. This is how I aggregate my sales numbers right here, week by week. And we look at the conditional formatting and we find patterns. And this is how we approximate price too, where if somebody's not selling something, or if we're selling too much of something, it might be an indication that we are overpriced, things like that. If we're not selling enough of something, yeah, that might be overpriced. If we're selling too much, we might actually be underpriced. And yeah, we basically look at those numbers and and see what we do. So I'll try to get to as many questions as we can here. Let me get back to chat. No secrets, just systems. Are your crews working hourly or on contract? We have full-time W-2s that work hourly. We have part-time W-2s that work hourly. We have subcontractors, and most of my leadership team is salary and bonus and benefits. So thank you for all the kind words, everybody. Nick's job costing spreadsheet is the best. Janessa, how's it going? Yes, if you email me, I will just send you my job costing thing. Again, I'm not looking at this saying it's the only way to do it. It's a great data point, and I just want the industry to job cost. So Nicole Rosen, oversimplification has helped tremendously. Spencer, can you give us this book? Nick is the man. Do you do all of your own marketing? Yes, I absolutely do. So it's one of the 3 main hats I wear right now. Number 1, I am visionary of my company. I am operations manager, which glues together my leadership team and my painters, and I am marketing manager as well. Those are the 3 main hats. I own about 9 different hats in the company if you actually take that out there. So yes, boy, marketing is a whole nother master's class and a whole nother thing. Where do I find the job costing spreadsheet? Let's see. I'll take a second to type in my email address, if that's appropriate, Tanner.
No, don't give away free information here, Nick.
at a free event for free information, Tanner, I am bringing a what the kids call a boatload of information for free and resources. So I am willing to help. You know this. I am a servant leader.
Yeah.
I just want my industry to job cost, Tanner. Literally, how do you schedule? Oh my God, scheduling is so crazy. If you job cost, you can solve that problem. It doesn't seem to connect. You can solve that problem with that. How do you hire? When do you hire? What do you pay people? All of it's solved with job costing. And I was beaten over the head with it years earlier, and it's awesome. So how do you structure your salespeople? All right. I would like, theoretically, half of their pay, half to 60% of their pay come in a base salary. I would like 40 to 50% of their pay to come in the form of a bonus. And how we do it in my company, oversimplification, there are so many insanely good ways to incentivize salespeople, production managers, coordinators, things like that. In my company, what we do is every single job that hits that 45% gross profit margin gets put into the green column. Every job that is below that goes into the red column. We add up all the revenue from the jobs in the green column and times it by a percentage that we negotiate with that particular person. Typically, it's between 1 and 2, 1 and 3%, give or take. So basically, roundabouts, what I found is that what you do is you take the market rate of what those sort of jobs entail. And the market rate dictates that you pay between $60,000 a year and $100,000 a year in total comp in this area for whatever else. And then how you divide that market rate out between base salary and other stuff is completely up to you. But I kind of like that mix of, I'm not the biggest fan of pure commission, because there's a lot of people that need to operate on a stable base so that they can feel comfortable to perform well. The most ravenous salespeople on earth will only take jobs with pure commission because they know they're just going to work 1,000,000 hours a week and do that. But that's a completely different personality from an estimator and like a client concierge. A pure salesperson is a completely different wild feral cat. And I do not have them in my company. They're not wrong. I just don't have them. So let's see. Pay comp, what kind of marketing you do? I have a mix of about 13 different things. The two main lead sources for me that comprise 40 to 60% of my leads. Word of mouth repeat referral is one. I've been in business for a long time. And number two, direct mail. But then I start going down the rabbit hole of there's Google, there's yard signs. I even have a newspaper ad. There's a magazine thing. I do email marketing. I do various websites, things like that. I mean, it goes down the list to the last 10 to 20% of all my leads. I get through about 10 different forms of marketing, right? And that comprises that. If I didn't have it, I'd be hurting. Typically, yeah, I think I aim for, on the low end, to maintain this company 40 to 45 leads a week. On the high end, I would really like to see between 65 and 75 leads a week to really optimize spreadsheets, or estimator schedules. So, all right. Are you not selling anymore? No, I have two estimators that do that, but I am the coach, the manager, and the mentor of that sales team. How do you pay your subs? Typically, we pay 40% of the revenue to our subs. This is all. It can be plus, it can be minus, depending on the job. But we provide all materials. We provide all of the job setup, client communication, and everything else. We basically just broker the labor for those jobs, and we broker those to people, trade partners who really take care of our clients, and we are very lucky to have them. So email is in there. Nick's spreadsheet changed my world. Wow, that's a little too much, Mr. Robert Lance. You're making me uncomfortable. Let's see. How do you structure pay? We have that. Thanks, Bearded Leader. Hammer Temple. Thank you. Next up, Mike Gore Hickman. Love that. He's a good dude, man. Let's see. I was thinking just last night, how do I job cost? That's an easy one to solve. Google search or email me. Juan Zarauza, is that for your leadership team or painters too? You might be asking about the bonusing system. It's a very difficult thing to structure a bonus system for painters. I believe with any bonus system, there has to be an upside and a downside. It can't only be upside because that doesn't incentivize people. So you basically have to have an upside and a downside. That's why I kind of like that base and bonus to be 50%. 50% of the total compensation plan is enough to make people comfortable, but it also is not enough, and it keeps them a little hungry to then perform and then, get that bonus, which is, I operate the same way. Tanner operates the same way. Humans all operate with incentives a lot better too. So We talked about main sources of marketing. If you're starting a business in today's world, how would you approach marketing? If I was starting off again, you can solve problems with time or money or both. I would solve them with my time because initially in business, we have a lot of time and not a lot of money. So at its face, I would get out there. I would print out a bunch of flyers. I would get a $28 solicitor's permit from my local town. I would walk door to door and knock and drop off flyers. That is 100% legal if you have that permit. Some towns you don't even need a permit. I would get out there and make it happen. For the cost of about $14 worth of printing, you could get out there and use your time to get jobs. But that's on the basis of I have a phone number, I have a website, I'm on social media posting for free, like all of that sort of things too. So how are you paying your W-2s? What a esoteric answer. So it's based on market rate over the years. The basis of my comp plans are the amount I pay people isn't as interesting as how we pay people. I review them. I sit them down for a goal setting and review meeting 4 times a year, and they can potentially get 4 raises a year. Now, what those raises are can vary depending on what they negotiate, their experience, and things like that. But the theory of how you pay people of you cannot wait 1 year for a review and a comp plan change. People are way too skittish nowadays. They're way too impatient. That's not a good or a bad thing. It just is. But I do it 4 times a year and potentially bump people's pay. If people want a raise in my company, you need to show up for a certain amount of hours, and a certain amount of your jobs, usually 75%, have to hit our gross profit goal. That's the baseline. So really, I've simplified everything down to you can rate people on a million things that you want, but I want 500 hours a quarter, and I want 75% of your jobs to hit 45% gross profit. If you do that, we'll talk raise. Absolutely. So what CRM are you using to track leads? I made a Google spreadsheet. We job cost every project. It helps so much. What's Nick's email to request his spreadsheet? Scroll up above, Mr. Paul Schneider. Alex, based on how you pay your subs, are you transparent about the price the job was sold with them? Do you prefer W-2s or subs? Both are very, very useful ways of solving problems for our clients. And one is not better than the other. In fact, a hybrid model is almost better because you can sort of like, you can solve different things. It's with W-2s, you own their time during the week and you can tell them where to be. With subs, you don't own that. But there's benefits with subs as well, too. Sometimes they move a little quicker. They're business owners. They're problem solvers. Sometimes they can do projects that W-2s don't. But then a lot of time, my W-2s can do projects that subs don't. So I see them as awesome. I absolutely love them. So, okay, let me see here. All right. There's my email again for everybody. Anyone else do a profit share bonus for crews that they hit 40%? We do 5% GP. Yeah, there's lots of ways to sort of incentivize crews like that. I am a firm believer though, that if you offer somebody a potential bonus and there's no downside, then really I've seen a lot of people be like, well, fine, I'll take it if you're offering, but otherwise I'm fine. You want to find some way to incentivize them to work forward it. And I think a lot of it has to do with personality. It's not a blanket statement that stuff doesn't work, because I know that companies do that, but you got to have the right personality. There's a big difference in the risk and reward profile between a painter, between leadership team, and between the owner of the business. A painter can damage a piece of furniture and still keep their job, and the business will pay for it. And sometimes, like in my company, you put your arm around them and say, hey, no big deal, not a big problem. Hey, we got this together. Mistakes are made. With the leadership team, if they don't perform well, they may make less money. That's not the case with the painter. In the business owner sense, we can actually lose money operating a job, but there's also a potential huge upside to it too. So where people are along that scale of, hey, listen, if I come to work, I need to get paid. Well, you can't operate like that as a business owner. You need to be able to risk your time, risk your money for stuff like that. So Tanner, how much time do I have left?
Yeah, let's do 5 more minutes, and then we got Mike coming up.
Okay. Oh, you know what? Sorry, guys. I'm sending it to the hosts and panelists. I will.
Well, that's why no one was getting your messages, Nick.
Boom. There you go, everybody.
If you want to take it, Nick, if you want to go to 2:00, we got 9 minutes. Go for it, man. I mean, we'll cap it off, and then Mike can start it too.
I'll stop jibber jabbering whenever you want, man.
All right, yeah, just take it to the top of the hour.
You got it. All right. So when you hire an estimator, and I'll be scrolling through the questions here as well. You have to really have airtight job descriptions about what kind of person you want, what kind of numbers you want, all that other stuff. You have to understand that a true dyed-in-the-wool salesperson is way different than an estimator, a project estimator, or even a client concierge if somebody helps with a project. So, and sometimes when you make an estimator be a salesperson or a salesperson be an estimator, it can rattle them. It doesn't fit their personality, and they can actually crumble or not perform as well. So you have to delineate between, are you, as a painting company, are you creating all of the leads and handing them to your people to estimate and sell those projects? Or are you telling them, I have no leads for you? Not only do you have to come up with leads, then you have to create estimates and then get the projects sold. Those are two different things, and they are vastly different things, two vastly different humans and everything. So yeah, that's basically, I would just urge you guys to understand that, or if you don't understand it, at least keep it in mind when one of your salespeople isn't performing well. You may be asking them to estimate. When one of your estimators might not be performing well, you may be asking them to sell, and that might like curl their skin a little bit. So let's see, for a $2 million revenue, how many salespeople would you have? Do you split the project manager role and sales role? Yes, I love these questions. So in my company, we hyper specialize. We actually have like an oversimplified sort of way of looking at this, which is in residential repaint, I would like, on its face, just think about this. A $1.5 million business unit would be an estimator selling 1.5, a production manager or project manager managing 1.5, and then you have 10 to 12, maybe 13 painters in order to produce that like that. That to me, no, I would probably say 11 painters, give or take 12 painters to do that. That would be a $1.5 million business unit. Now, if you went to 2 million, and depending on the average job size in your industry, you might run into some weird areas, because now if a project manager can do 1.5 and an estimator can do 1.5, if you bring on another entire project manager and estimator to fill that extra 500K, somebody's not going to get all their bonus. They're not going to have enough work to do. So then that may force you to grow to 3 million all of a sudden. And that's where you find these steps and lanes in business company growth. On the low end, I would say it would be a very high overhead company. But if you had to pay a market rate for an estimator and a project manager here in Minnesota, and you had 2 estimators, 2 project managers, and you were only doing $2 million in revenue, I think you would be in the black. In the red. I think you would be losing a lot of money, because that is a lot of overhead for only $2 million worth of business. Now, not to say it can't happen, not to say you can't, cobble it all together, but theoretically, most companies that I see are well-running, professional like that. 2 estimators, 2 project managers, maybe an office coordinator, and the owner gluing it all together. You're probably at a $3 to $3.5 million business at that point. So 2 would be that weird, some people call them death valleys, where you're either going to overstress one project manager and estimator, or you're not going to have near enough work and there's not going to be enough pay for 2, and your company's going to be in the red. So that could be swayed back and forth like that, but it's kind of like, yeah, I don't know. You just have to find your sweet spot in there. Talk to a lot of other painting companies, join the PCA, talk to me, talk to Tanner. All the information's out there. Again, do you have enough grit to get out there and get it and do what you can? So working with commercial builders versus residential, what are the biggest advantages, disadvantages? I think honestly, Mike Wista, I think honestly, it has to do with your personality. I don't know that I would enjoy work as much if I did commercial projects. I love the residential side of it. And I don't know that a lot of commercial guys would love going down to painting decks and fences and stuff like that. So pluses and minuses, the average job size is much larger in commercial. So the average job size is usually 20 to 30,000 versus in residential, you might be looking to 5 to 7,000. So you're going to have to do a lot more jobs, and it takes a lot of management. But sometimes at commercial jobs, you're dealing with other contractors. So they dictate schedule and scope, which would kind of make your life hell. And there's the whole litigation side of commercial and industrial, where typically a lot of if you got $1 million paint job, it's likely that you get your last 10% of that job in court. And that's not a bad thing. That's just kind of how it goes. You're always litigating and negotiating with that stuff. So you got to be a pro if you're getting into the commercial and industrial world. It's certainly going to help you here. So Juan, do you offer financing? We do not. Clients have credit cards. They can also get a line of credit through a bank. They can also do a home equity loan. There's 1,000 other options outside of a painting company offering them financing. It's not wrong. It's just something that I don't have a big demand for from my clients. What are you averaging pay-wise for your sales team? low performer, 70, high performer, 100 plus, give or take, depending on how they operate. What percentage of revenue do you spend on marketing? 3.5% is my beautiful golden goal that I have not got yet. 5 to 6% is what I can sort of operate on average. 7 to 10% is when I'm in high growth mode. That's percentage of revenue dedicated to marketing, give or take. Caleb, I'm not sure I truly understand the difference between salesperson and estimator. Estimator is somebody that you hand the leads to. You say, here's a house, here's a client, here's the project. I need you to assign a price and a scope to it and see if you can't get that client to say yes to this project so we can paint it. A salesperson typically is, hey, I don't have any leads for you, but you need to sell a $1.5 million worth of paint work. So you need to call clients. You need to start your own marketing. You need to get a book of business. You need to make the leads show up, and you need to get out there and not only make the leads show up, but then have them to get an estimate and then sell that project. So there you go. Do you only hire estimators or do you hire a salesperson? My company does estimators. I'm not opposed to salespeople, but it's a very specific role. Right now we're operating under the farming and versus hunting category, which is I am the farmer. I am planting the seeds. The seeds are my potential clients, and my 2 estimators go out there and pick and harvest. A salesperson would go out there with a spear and a bow and arrow and find deer in the woods by themselves. And it's basically like, listen, you're going to go hungry if you don't be very effective. I'm not going to tell you where the deer is. I'm not going to tell you how to hunt them. I'm not going to tell you how to clean them or even cook them. Peace be on you. Get out in the woods and make it happen. And those are 2 different personalities here. So, what is your W-2 to sub ratio? Every year we have increased. We started subcontracting 3+ years ago. And basically we started at about 5%, then 10%, 15%. We're probably going to be at 20 to 25% this year, with the overall goal of probably being somewhere between 30 and 50% when it's done. I love my W-2s. I love my subs, but we're finding the happy spot with the ratios in there. So how big's your radius? Can you spread yourself too thin? 100%. Absolutely. So we will go 50 to 60 minutes away, but we really try to keep our people within a half an hour. We operate in Minnesota. There's not a lot of traffic. So when we go 45 minutes away, it's typically 42 miles away, right? So we're not sitting there. It's not like going across Chicago where you go 2 miles and it takes you 40 minutes during rush hour. It's not that. So we'll go within about a 30, 40 mile radius of where we are. We're in an outer ring suburb. So Joe Griffin, if you take credit cards, do you eat the credit card fee? Always pass it along. No reason to do that. There isn't a business on earth that eats a credit card fee for its clients. They always pass it on. So are you transparent with clients about using subs? Always. Do your subs always follow your SOPs? We sell a job and a process, and they follow up with it. And as long as they get a good result, they probably deviate from my SOPs. But legally, you can't tell them where to do it, when to do it, or how to do it if you follow the letter of the law. Do you have any satellite offices? No. I am located in one place, 45 minutes from Minneapolis and St. Paul. Do your staff work remote or at the shop? We have a shop facility, office, training facility, all that. We all work there. And I think I am at 1 o'clock, and I think I am actually caught up with questions as well, too. Is that it for me, Tanner?
Yeah, we're wrapping up now. I got Mike with Painter Growth coming up. Nick, I want to thank you, man, for all the wisdom. I mean, I could sit here and listen to this Q&A the rest of the day. I'm sure everyone else can. So, honestly, man, just thank you for what you do for us, and someone we can look up to as a leader in our industry, man. As always, we appreciate you.
Always. And listen, I'm looking at the rest of these panelists here, and I am super humbled by everybody, especially Mike, Austin, Maggie, Alex, and Tanner. Thank you for doing this. You're a leader in our industry. And thank you, everybody, for participating and trying to professionalize our industry.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Nick. Get back to your training. I know it's guns a blazing over there.
You got it, man. Thanks, guys.
Yep.